Hello everyone, my name is Casper. So today what I'm going to be discussing, let me see if I can fix this cable here, get it a little bit longer. I want to bring the laptop closer to me. Here we go. Is that a little bit better? So hi, my name is Casper. I work for info at opportunity.to, and so my focus is on getting opportunity.to where it needs to go. All right. So I would call myself something of a product designer, and I've been giving these weekly presentations for a way to get my own mind working, because I'm something of an extroverted thinker, and so the more I lecture or discuss a subject, I become more sophisticated in thought. So what I would like to present today is what I think might be the final solution to what we have been looking for. So what Martin and I have been working on initially has been a mode of incrementalism, whereas I think that might have been the wrong approach. And even when you say incrementalism, it's actually a theoretical mode of it's actually a negative stereotype in almost everything regarding to technology. What you're looking for is these leap changes, these things that change the paradigm of what technology actually exists to be. And I think the most valuable thing that has happened from the internet is simply the classic indexed, and that can be seen simply from the power of Google. It's indexed websites. The power of Facebook, it's indexed people. I don't think there's anything outside of Facebook. I'm not sure there's anything more valuable. Like even the phone number. The phone number is not of ultimate value, because it doesn't really. A lot of marketers call the phone number, so that's cell number, the holy grail of marketing, because once you have an individual cell number, you can always market to them some way, and they say it's statistically the best way to track an individual throughout their lives. But what changes even less than a phone number? It's a name. And I've been coming to terms with why most job search just doesn't work, and I think it doesn't work for a number of reasons, because people can't value production very well, and with all these side projects that I've been considering implementing, I think that I'm going to execute all my energy and focus onto this one project, because it makes the most logical sense. So with that being said, let's continue. So the machine learning name aggregator. Question mark. What is the final value? What is the final value? What is the purpose of machine learning names? I just did a simple Google search, and there are tens of thousands of actual names that are real, that have been indexed, that are available. In fact, there are so many that it's hard to put a finger on, that are publicly available. And you know what's really funny about names? the higher the competence of the individual, so meaning they're a professional, the higher the likelihood that individual's name is in the public domain. So the people with the most competence may be in fact the easiest to find. And that's a fascinating connection. You would think that the people with the highest competence may in fact be the hardest to find, but they in fact, I'm repeating myself, but they may in fact be the most available. You know, they may not be active on social media, but it doesn't matter because they may be in the list of alumni. They may be in on a website about us. They may have a business card. They may have a business. They may be in some organization member lists. They may be in, tagged in pictures with other people of importance. It's really fascinating. So it almost seems like it's a law of nature. It's really rainy here in Hong Kong. Anyways, I'll continue. So again, I have the authority to speak about this subject because I've been directly exposed to hundreds of thousands of job applications and the data behind it by running a job search application. Now, if you do have any questions about anything, just simply send an email at info@opportunity.to. So, why names? Why target names first? I mean, Facebook has a bunch of names. Twitter, maybe not Twitter because people use handles that are short form typically. What's another one? LinkedIn. For the Chinese market, there's WeChat. But people typically don't use their real names. They use some kind of handle. And the most valuable thing, surprisingly, in the Chinese market has been the QQID. Now, I'm not sure if any of you remember this, but ICQ used to be really big, and QQ is basically just a rip of QQ. But it blew up in China because communication is so expensive. So people who have an internet connection, it was much more accessible and it was easier to use because it didn't require as much setup as an email. People didn't need to have a mail server. And so when QQ came onto the market, a lot of people who started using were already they were already quite mature adults, and they had never had exposure to computers. So when QQ came around, it was actually really easy for them to set up an account. They just put their name, and that's it. Their name, and they would get a QQ ID, and it was really easy to set up, just like ICQ back in the day. So I think all of us, we overlook names as something of unvalued information, right? I know that a lot of people are relatively private about their names. There's this habit of people actually changing their names on their social profiles. For example, if their name was Steve, Steve, they would maybe change it to Stefan or something like this. And if their last name was Jones, they would change it to Jones with a Z, Jonze, Jones, or Jonesy, and they would add a double E, or they would put a Y on the end. So it would be, instead of Steve Jones, it would be Stefan Jonesy, right? And this was very typical for a lot of these individuals. And there was a certain sense of privacy. So what would be the purpose of indexing people's names? If the name is already in the public domain, and from what I understand in America is because I've been really thinking, like, would it be fair to index people's names if they're in the public domain? How would they feel about that as an individual? Would they be okay with, finding their name on a website or some list without them subscribing to that service? And there might be some kind of repulsion or maybe disgust. Maybe a feeling of exploitation. And I've battled with this because if something exists publicly, it's not that it's aggregated to a single index. And so it's in a mirage, it's somewhere in the rough, It's not targetable unless someone's actively seeking that individual. So there's these monopolies in place. So we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, I would say there's only two serious social mediums that actually use people's full names, and that would be Facebook and LinkedIn. You could argue Instagram, but people have handles, and they don't typically go about starting from that point. How do you actively search the individual? You need to know their tag to be able to find them. A lot of people are found on Instagram indirectly through Facebook. So I would say Facebook and LinkedIn. And that includes the Chinese market because Chinese people relatively, they typically have very similar names. And the reason I bring up China, because they don't have access to Facebook, and they recently have had access to LinkedIn, but their ability to make connections is quite limited because they suppress. LinkedIn suppresses how much Chinese businesses can add people to their professional networks because there's a lot of factories and a lot of businesses in the export market. So to make the environment suitable, kind, and nice to those individuals, they've had to to those western parts, so they don't get inundated with Chinese sales for parts. They've needed to tone that back. Like I myself, I receive about 12 cold emails a day, ununique, completely different suppliers, and known suppliers. I also get another 10, so maybe 20 cold emails per day. It's sales, right? Sometimes there's actual value in those pitches, but it's almost like a lot of people won't actually even go for that because with those, it's that invasion of privacy that someone is pitching you, but it's that cold approach. And I think there's that very similar kind of repulsion or maybe disgust if someone found their name indexed. It's kind of almost like, how dare you? Funny thing is people will voluntarily, make their lives public, photographs and this, to a medium that has the intention of sharing that data with third parties, Facebook or LinkedIn. So it's gonna happen. It already exists. I myself have a Hong Kong ID. That tag it's basically a barcode, but it's just not on my body. My barcode's my face, right? They already use machine learning to make sure that maybe I'm going through any border to make sure to confirm that I'm the person that's going through the border. I mean, this technology already exists. So if my face is my barcode, and I'm already indexed by the government, if I'm already indexed by the largest, businesses, I'm indexed by credit card companies, I hope you can tell that I've just really battled with this. And the excuse that if I don't execute it, that somebody else will, may not actually be a good argument either. So I'm really trying to render why it would be okay. And I think it's simply because that information is public, that it can be indexed, and it simply ties in if you're not trying to ruin somebody's reputation, right? If you're simply indexing an individual and you're not doing anything to harm a person's reputation, it's simply another index, just like it would be a business or a professional or a lead list, a call list. So I think it's just that one thing that I'm battling is that the uninventation. And I think that if people were to start would start hearing about the platform, they will come at it with a negative mindset, which I don't think would be very good. And there would be there may be a lot of people who would have this disgust response and may wish to actually see the website go away, which is also a very bad sign, because these petitions, they can put a lot of pressure on the host to not share that information. So it's something very serious to consider. A name, actually, let's go back. A name has a lot of information that can be interpreted. It's true. So, my name is Kasper Petrikowski. You can take a look that, I have a Slavic name. What can you learn from the Slavic name? Maybe from what region I'm from, if you look a little bit deeper. The aggregate of the Slavic names, if they are found in a certain area, you can determine potentially what my heritage is, what my genotype is. You can also determine, from my first name, what was the choice or the heritable thought process to which the popularity of my first name was in regards to other people's names during that same time of when I was born. You can get into very sophisticated decision trees about this, and there's and the more information that is found later on that assumes that you can get a more sophisticated outlook on what makes up this person's character, right? Without even knowing very much. So the fascinating thing is it all simply comes from a name. So I think because a name entails so much, you can further find who interacts with that name. Okay? So if people are interested in a certain name from a certain region, that can be determined through accounts that they may be using. And it's important to know these things because it can simplify what could be the potential competence of an individual if you know certain things like what is the education level within a country, what is the government structure, what might be the potential age of a person, because names have trends. Simply the name itself can tell you approximately how old this person is. If there isn't other names that are similar to this, you can find that this person is has a very unique heritage and maybe one of the last of their family line, potentially. So I don't know what value that can do, but there is. Okay. Yeah, so each name is relatively unique, and there are not so many duplicates when considered in total aggregate. And that's relatively true. Potentially, if you go to Korea, I think Koreans have the most similar and homogeneous names. So they're the most homogeneous society in the world. But not only that, they have the most homogeneous names. So Kim and Park are basically like 80% of the country. That being said, that you might find 100,000 people under a certain type of name within Korea. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. So there will have to be a more sophisticated layer. There will have to be a layer of sophistication for certain regions. But, for example, there might be Sujin Park. Sujin Park in a certain region of Korea, and there might be only 20 of them. Sujin Park of small townlet or village, and there might be 2. Sujin Park of north side, Sujin Park of south side of this townlet, and there you go. And so these things can be assumed based on the voluntary involvement of these individuals, because they can adopt their names from the index. And so I would like to continue a little bit further. So the total aggregate of names posted online can be aggregated at a very aggressive pace as they are so substantial. Does this make any sense? The total aggregate of names posted online can be aggregated at a very aggressive pace as they are so substantial. So simply means that there are, in the public domain, there are just so many names available. There's not just one person, per web page. In news media, there are people whom are referenced. There's the journalist's name. There's other famous people who are found in the news media. And I'm not entirely sure, but I think Google's backrub algorithm is no longer under patent protection, and so that is no longer under patent protection. So that algorithm can be applied to the name and from where that media and that link can be found. And so later, more sophisticated determinisms can be applied to people's names, which I think is really important because the average person spends less than 5 minutes updating their LinkedIn profile, and it's mostly BS. It's not true. I forget the statistic, but something like about 60% of people fib on their applications, literally fib, right? And 80% are, gray area type propositions on their actual resume. So 80% are, I'm not, you should Google this, but I do have, I read some studies before. 80% are in the gray area. and you might be guilty of this too if you've written a resume. You do a little bit of puffery. You puff yourself up on your resume. I mean, how can you blame anybody for doing that? They want to put their best foot forward and they want to make sure that they're the most competitive. It's actually really hard to challenge that kind of competency. So, a lot of people do it, and they know they can get away with it because everyone does it, right? It's almost like an unspoken truth. And 60% of people just directly lie, which is completely outstanding. It's totally remarkable that someone would actually go about doing that. So, I don't think resumes, because resumes can't be taken for face value. Why? Because they may not even be true. And if they're in their public domain, a lot of people are going to exploit that information. That being said, there's also a lot of recruiting firms. They're in the kind of like this nasty business of aggregating. Like I've heard of some companies, their value of the recruiting firm is a certain amount because they have like 1 million high quality resumes of a certain professional nature, or 100,000 of ultra, of like CEO or director level type people, and so they have their contact information. So there is value in it, and there's still people. Recruiting is a really good business, and it's a very strong business here in Hong Kong. But what's the purpose of the middleman, right? What is the definite? You're basically asking someone else. You're delegating the search of what you're looking for to a third party. And it seems kind of 1980s. It's not where the world should be right now. And a lot of people who do go through the recruiting firms, sometimes are satisfied, sometimes not. And in my experience, the people who are brought in through recruiting firms, they're actually lost quite quickly. for whatever reason, they're found with the recruiting firm, and that kind of, and just because that relationship was initiated by a third party, I would love to be able to see a statistic, but I got an inkling of a feeling that the long-term employee, the ones that really are loyal, I'd be hard pressed to say that would be found through transplanted by a recruiting firm. So machine learning can be indexed from reference databases, including material that was once publicized. Yeah, so like I was mentioning before, I did a simple Google search. I found there was like 100,000 actual names. There's also these reference libraries of historical names. Wikipedia itself, there's historical people. The Forbes list, well, there's only 100, but there's another example. And there's so many that you can get into. There's alumni lists that are publicly available from certain universities. There are, what else is there? What else is there? Facebook is a private website, so that information is not available. The white pages, right? Yellow pages for businesses. There are professionals' names within the yellow pages, such as lawyers, doctors, dentists, optometricians, right? Piano teachers, things like this. So tying all names to a single database is the number one value target for the indexing of services. And that's true. That was true for yellow pages back in the day. If you're going to look for a business, they got to be in the yellow pages. And the yellow pages is basically, I'm not even sure if it's still functioning in the same way that it is. From my experience, basically, Yellow Pages was acting as a SEO ranking company, and they're using the reputation of their phone number, right? Because they have a relationship with, they do have a relationship with the telephone companies, right? Because they're such a big player, they were allowed to cold call, unlike other operators, and they already had, they were pretty flush in cash-rich business, but they were already starting getting eaten up by. They already started getting eaten up by the online classifieds type businesses, and so what I found was I was getting a call so many times a day, around 2014, 2015, about making a certain website. And that being said, that's pretty much the end of what I have to say. So I'm going to get back on talking about this subject. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and I'm going to restart the video. Okay? Thank you very much for listening.